Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is my story. I had always been a dreamer. Growing up in a small, struggling town, I believed I could rise above the circumstances, that somehow I could build a life that was different. But that dream always seemed far away, like a distant star that I could never reach. It was the summer of my senior year in high school when everything changed. I had just turned 18, and my world was filled with excitement for the future. I had scholarships lined up, a few jobs lined up, and for the first time, it felt like my life was taking shape. But then I missed my period. At first, I tried to ignore it. It's probably nothing, I told myself. But as the days passed, the fear in my chest grew, until I could no longer pretend. I went to the clinic, sat in the sterile waiting room, and tried to steady my shaking hands. When the doctor gave me the news, my heart stopped. I was pregnant. I couldn't breathe, and I looked at the doctor, trying to process what I had just heard. All I could think was, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. As I left the clinic, I couldn't shake the feeling of everything crumbling. My future, my plans, everything I had dreamed about was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on to it. I was scared and I felt trapped. The hardest part wasn't just the news, it was the shame that came with it. In our small town, people didn't get pregnant at 18 unless they were careless or irresponsible. I was neither of those things. I was a good student. I had dreams, ambitions. But now, in the blink of an eye, I was just another statistic. I didn't know how to face my family, how to explain this to my parents. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I hadn't even figured out who I was yet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my mother. Her eyes were tired, but there was something else in them, something I had never seen before. "What are we going to do, honey?" she asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't bring myself to answer. I just shook my head. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered. The tears started to fall then, and I couldn't stop them. My mother reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "We'll figure this out together. You're not alone. You never will be." But even her words didn't comfort me. I didn't know what to do. The world felt heavy on my shoulders. The next few weeks were a blur of doctors' visits, tests, and sleepless nights. Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me. She seemed so different, lost, unsure, and filled with a fear that wouldn't go away. I couldn't stop thinking about my future. How could I have it all? How could I chase my dreams while carrying a child? One afternoon, after my mom had left for work, I sat in my room, my phone in my hand. I scrolled through social media, looking at the lives of girls who were living the life I had imagined for myself. They were in college, they were traveling, they were happy. And then there was me, stuck. I was scrolling mindlessly when I saw an ad pop up. It was a company selling maternity clothes, trendy and stylish. Something about it caught my eye. I clicked the link. Maybe, just maybe, there was something here. As I looked at the page, something inside me shifted. I started to imagine a different life, a life where I could still be myself, still be strong, and still chase my dreams, even if they had to look a little different. I didn't know it yet, but this would be the start of something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. A journey that would change everything. I spent the next few days with a new sense of purpose. That maternity ad had sparked something inside me, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. I started researching online, looking for ways to merge my love for fashion with the reality of being a young, soon-to-be mom. There had to be a way to create something for women like me, women who needed to feel confident, even when their bodies were changing in ways they couldn't control. It wasn't long before I realized that maternity was a market with huge gaps. Most of the options were either old-fashioned, oversized, or just plain uncomfortable. But what if there was a way to create clothes that were stylish, comfortable, and affordable? I started sketching designs that I knew nothing about starting a business or creating clothes, but I figured the worst thing that could happen was I would fail, and I had already experienced failure in a way that made everything else seem small. Being pregnant at 18, that was my personal rock bottom. Anything from here on out was a step forward. One evening, after scrolling through countless websites and watching YouTube tutorials on how to sew, I took a deep breath and called my best friend Lily. "Lily, I think I figured out what I want to do," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "What do you mean?" Lily asked, the sound of her voice full of curiosity. "I want to start a line of maternity clothes," I said. Not the frumpy, oversized stuff, but trendy, cute outfits that make women feel good about themselves. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "You want to do that?" "While pregnant?" she asked, the skepticism clear in her voice. I took a deep breath. "Yes, I think it's the only way I'll get through this, by doing something that I can feel proud of. I want to create something for women who feel like I do, like they don't have a place in this world anymore. I want to give them something to feel good about." Lily let out a soft sigh. "Sarah, you're amazing. You really are. But are you sure you can do this?" I could hear the doubt in her voice, but also a flicker of support. It was all I needed. "I'm going to try," I said firmly. "I have to." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I spent every free moment reading about business plans, watching DIY videos, and gathering inspiration from anywhere I could. But there was one thing that weighed heavily on my mind. I had no money, not enough to start a business at least. My savings had been wiped out paying for doctor's appointments and prenatal vitamins. I didn't want to ask my parents for help. They had enough to worry about, especially now that I was pregnant. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I created a crowdfunding campaign. It was an awkward thing to do, to ask strangers for money. But the idea of my vision coming to life kept me going. I wrote the campaign description, explaining who I was, what I was trying to accomplish, and why it mattered. I told my story, the fear, the shame, and the hope that now burned inside me. A part of me was terrified. What if no one cared? What if I failed before I even began? But I posted it, heart pounding, and waited. The first few days felt like an eternity. My goal was modest, but even that seemed unreachable. Then, slowly, small amounts started trickling in. $10 here, $20 there. Each donation felt like a lifeline. But the real turning point came when a woman named Maria, who I'd never met, donated $500 with a message. "Your dream matters. Don't give up." I sat there staring at the message for minutes, tears welling up in my eyes. This stranger believed in me. That's when I knew I couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. The donations kept coming, small but steady. By the end of the month, I had enough to rent a small workshop and hire a seamstress to help me with the designs. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get started. I could feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I had a sense of direction. I wasn't just a scared teenager anymore. I was someone with a purpose. I still remember the day I walked into that tiny workshop for the first time. The walls were bare, and the air smelled of fabric and fresh paint. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every inch of that space felt like a dream, slowly becoming a reality. I met with my seamstress, Laura, a woman in her late 40s who had worked in fashion for years. She was kind but direct, a no-nonsense type of person who had seen it all. "So, what do you have in mind?" she asked, rolling up her sleeves as she sat at the sewing machine. I pulled out my sketches, simple but modern designs that were both stylish and practical. I had decided I didn't want just one maternity line. I wanted clothes that could be worn before, during, and after pregnancy. I wanted my customers to feel confident and beautiful, no matter where they were in their journey. Laura looked at the designs, her brow furrowing in concentration. "They're good," she said, nodding thoughtfully. "But do you know what your fabric choices are?" I froze. Fabric, I hadn't thought about it yet. No. I was thinking of something soft and stretchy. She let out a small chuckle. "All right. Well, stretchy is fine, but you need to think about quality. You want something that breathes, something that doesn't stretch out after a few washes. If these are going to be good enough, you'll need to invest in the right materials." I nodded, a bit embarrassed. "Okay, I'll figure it out." We spent the next few hours going over fabric samples, deciding on what would work best for the designs. I learned quickly the right materials could make or break the clothes. I didn't have much money left, but I realized I would need to prioritize quality over quantity. Over the next few weeks, the collection began to take shape. The first batch was small, a few dresses, a couple of tops, and a pair of leggings that could stretch and grow with the wearer. I was nervous, terrified even, that no one would want them. What if they didn't fit? What if they weren't as stylish as I thought? One night, after a long day of sewing and planning, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the clothes hanging in my tiny office. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something other than fear. I felt proud. The next step was launching the website. I spent hours trying to make it as user-friendly as possible, writing descriptions for each item and taking photos with a borrowed camera. My hands shook as I clicked the publish button for the first time. It felt surreal, my little dream, now a website that people could actually visit and buy from. I knew I wasn't ready for the attention. I wasn't ready to be a businesswoman. But I didn't have a choice that I had already started something, and I was going to finish it. The first few days after launching were agonizing. I checked the website every few minutes, waiting for someone to buy something. Nothing. I refreshed the page over and over again, praying for at least one order. But the hours turned into days, and the page remained empty. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall, but unable to move forward. On the third day, I received my first notification. Someone had bought a pair of leggings. I stared at the email in disbelief. Someone actually bought something. I couldn't contain the rush of excitement that flooded through me. It wasn't much, but it was everything. That first sale felt like proof that I wasn't crazy. It felt like validation. The next morning, I got up early, packed the leggings with care, and drove to the post office, smiling the entire way. But it wasn't just about the sale. It was about proving to myself that I could do this, that I could make my vision a reality, even if it meant starting small. And that's when I realized this was only the beginning. The excitement from my first sale didn't last long. Over the next few weeks, I faced reality head-on. Orders trickled in, but they were barely enough to cover the cost of fabric, production, and shipping. The pressure was building that I was juggling my business with doctor's appointments, pregnancy-related exhaustion, and trying to figure out how to survive on what little money I had left. One afternoon, I sat at my small desk, staring at the numbers on my laptop. I had just finished paying Laura for the last batch of designs, and the balance in my account was quickly draining. I couldn't afford to keep going like this. Not if things didn't change. I called Lily, my best friend, who had been my rock throughout this entire process. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me for feeling overwhelmed. "Hey, Lily, can we talk?" I said when she picked up. My voice felt heavy, and I could already feel the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. "Of course, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," I admitted, my words feeling like they were stuck in my throat. "I have bills piling up, the orders are still small, and I'm not sure how to keep it going. I can't even afford more fabric at this point." There was a long pause. Lily had always been the one to tell me the truth, even when it was hard to hear. "You know, you're allowed to feel like this, right?" she said softly. "This is hard, really hard, but giving up, that's not an option. If you stop now, you'll never know if it could have worked." "I know," I whispered, "but what if it never works? What if I'm just chasing a pipe dream? What if I'm too young, too inexperienced?" "Sarah," she said, her voice firm but kind, "the fact that you've made it this far says everything about you. You are capable of this. Just don't let fear get the best of you. You're not alone in this." I let out a shaky breath, feeling both comforted and more uncertain. I don't know if I can keep going. What if I end up just wasting my time? "Do you really think that? Or do you just need a little push to see the bigger picture?" Lily asked. "Listen, every successful person has a moment like this. You're just in one of those moments right now. But it's temporary. You can't see it now, but if you just take it day by day, you might be surprised." That conversation with Lily stayed with me. I had to figure out how to keep going, even if it felt like everything was falling apart. So, I did the only thing I knew how to do when I felt lost. I took action. I spent the next few days reaching out to bloggers, influencers, and small businesses that might be interested in my clothes. I offered them free samples in exchange for honest reviews or shout-outs on social media. I spent hours crafting emails and personalizing messages to make sure they knew how much my brand meant to me. Then, a breakthrough point, one of the influencers, a mom blogger with a huge following, responded. Her name was Emily, and she had just given birth to her second child. "I love what you're doing," Emily wrote in her reply. "I'd be happy to try your clothes and feature them on my blog. But I'd also love to give you some advice on growing your brand." You seem like you really care about your customers." I almost couldn't believe it that a professional influencer wanted to work with me. Emily's advice was invaluable. She helped me understand social media strategies, how to market to my target audience, and even how to optimize my website for better visibility. She pushed me to take my brand seriously, even when it felt like no one else did. With Emily's help, I started posting consistently on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Slowly, the word started to spread, orders began to pick up, and I could see the interest in my brand growing. It wasn't fast, but it was steady, and that was enough to keep me going. The money was still tight, but I began to feel a flicker of hope again. I couldn't afford to hire more help, but I was learning to do everything myself, from photography to packaging to customer service. Every small step forward felt like a victory. And then, one morning, I received a message that changed everything. It was from a buyer at a well-known online retailer. "We've been following your brand for a while now, and we'd love to talk about a potential partnership." I couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity one had been waiting for. I jumped at the chance to speak with them, even though I still felt unsure and scared. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had built a network of supporters, people who believed in me, and that made all the difference. The day I received the email from the online retailer, I could hardly breathe. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was it, my chance to take everything to the next level. I called Lily immediately. "You will not believe this," I said, almost too excited to form coherent sentences. "Wait, what happened?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. "They want to partner with me. They want to carry my collection on their website." I nearly shouted. "Shut up," Lily said, sounding both stunned and thrilled. "Are you serious?" "I'm freaking out," I admitted, pacing the room. "This is huge. But what if I mess it up? What if they change their minds?" "Sarah, you've been working for this moment from day one," Lily said. "You're ready. This is what all your hard work has been leading up to. Don't doubt yourself now." I needed to calm down, but I couldn't afford to let anxiety take control. I was about to speak to a major retailer about my brand, and I had to be prepared. I spent the rest of the day organizing my thoughts, refining my pitch, and rehearsing what I would say. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. The next morning, I got on the phone with the buyer. She was professional but warm, and her questions were direct. "So, Sarah, tell me about your brand. What makes your clothing line different from other maternity wear?" she asked. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking but my voice steady. I wanted to create maternity clothes that didn't make women feel like they had to hide who they were. I know what it's like to feel like your life has stopped, but I want my customers to feel confident and stylish, no matter where they are in their pregnancy journey. The buyer listened intently, nodding along. "That's what I love about your brand," she said. "There's a real story behind it, and the designs are fresh and modern. I think our customers would really resonate with your message." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just a maybe. This was happening. A week later, I received a contract in my inbox. My mind raced as I read through the details. They were offering to place a large order of my collection, a huge order, and in exchange, they would give me the exposure I needed. The partnership could change everything. There was a catch, of course. The terms were strict. They wanted to see a certain level of growth within the first few months, or they could terminate the contract. They needed a specific type of product, a certain volume of inventory. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready. For the next few weeks, it felt like the entire world was moving at lightning speed. I worked day and night with Laura, getting everything ready for the big order. We doubled down on production, sourcing new fabric, and getting everything packaged and shipped out. I barely had time to sleep, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't afford to mess this up. Then, the first sales report came in. I was terrified and I opened the email slowly, my heart in my throat, bracing myself for bad news. But when I saw the numbers, I couldn't believe my eyes. Sales were through the roof, the brand was resonating with customers, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. It was happening. The dream was becoming a reality. I remember sitting in my tiny office, looking at the numbers, feeling a wave of relief and pride wash over me. I had done it. Against all odds, I had created something that people actually wanted, something that mattered. But the road didn't end there. As the sales grew, so did the challenges. My small operation couldn't keep up with the demand. I was still working from home, packing boxes late into the night, barely keeping up with emails and customer inquiries. Every day brought new obstacles, new decisions to make, new problems to solve. But each challenge was a reminder that I was building something real. And each victory, no matter how small, reminded me why I started. I hired a small team to help with customer service and logistics, and slowly, the pressure started to ease. We started expanding the collection, adding new items, and improving our marketing strategy. The retailer continued to be impressed with the growth, and they offered to feature my brand in one of their major promotional campaigns. That was the moment I realized just how far I had come. From the terrified 18-year-old who thought her life was over to a business owner with a growing brand. It wasn't just about selling clothes anymore. It was about helping women like me, women who didn't feel ready for what life had thrown at them, but who still wanted to feel beautiful, powerful, and capable. The year that followed felt like a blur of late nights, endless emails, and constant growth. My brand was no longer a small operation. It had transformed into something that was influencing the market, changing the way women thought about maternity wear. But with success came a new set of challenges. I had grown quickly, and the demand for my clothes had outpaced my ability to keep up. Managing the logistics, production, and even the finances became overwhelming at times. I remember sitting in a small cafe one morning, staring at my laptop. I had just wrapped up another meeting with a new potential business partner, and while the conversation had gone well, the weight of it all was starting to feel heavier. I was juggling so many things at once, making sure my clothes were on track, working on new designs, maintaining relationships with influencers, managing my team. There were moments when I thought, is this really what I wanted? I had built this company from the ground up, but I hadn't fully stopped to appreciate what it all meant. Success had come so quickly, and I was always running to the next milestone, never taking time to reflect. That afternoon, I got a message that completely changed my perspective. It was from Emily, the influencer who had helped me when I was first starting. "Hey, Sarah, I wanted to check in. How are you doing? Really? I know you're probably super busy, but I wanted to remind you, you've done something amazing here." I smiled at the message, but at the same time, I felt a pang of guilt. "I'm fine, just a little overwhelmed," I replied. "There's always something new to deal with, you know." She replied almost immediately, "That's exactly it. You're doing everything, but are you taking time to enjoy it? You've built something incredible, and it's okay to stop for a second and just be proud." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Just be proud. It was the first time in months that I actually stopped to think about how far I'd come. I wasn't just a scared, overwhelmed teenager anymore. I wasn't someone who was paralyzed by uncertainty and fear. I had built a brand from scratch. I had turned my dreams into reality. And yes, the challenges were real, but so were the victories. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a team, a supportive network, and most importantly, I had the strength to keep pushing forward. That night, I took a moment to reflect. I sat down in my living room, watching the sun set outside my window, and I let myself feel a deep sense of gratitude. I had overcome so many obstacles, fears, doubts, struggles. I'd worked through late nights, financial stress, and moments when it felt like I was on the brink of failure. But none of that had stopped me. And now, I wasn't just running a business. I was creating something that mattered. Something that helped women feel confident, beautiful, and empowered no matter what they were going through. And that was the real success. When I look back on those early days, the days when I felt like my whole world had come crashing down, I realized that it was all part of the journey. I thought my life was over when I first found out I was pregnant, but in reality, it was just the beginning of something bigger than I ever imagined. Now, I have a thriving business, a growing team, and a new sense of purpose. And while I'm still learning, still growing, and still facing challenges, I know that I have the strength to keep going. Because the real meaning of success isn't just about the money, the partnerships, or the recognition. It's about what you learn along the way. It's about resilience, and it's about proving to yourself that you can overcome anything, no matter how impossible it seems. And most importantly, it's about looking back one day and realizing that the struggle was worth it.